Oh, yeah, you guys are hearing it. Welcome, welcome. I'm Mia Voss, and you are watching and listening to the Mia Connect Power Chat. I'm Mia Voss, and I have two amazing guests. And here's the great thing. Laura Fabiani, first of all, we have to give her a shout out because she's the reason that I know both of these guests. So let's all clap for her. Are you ready? Laura Fabiani told me about both of these guests, and both of them are experts in childcare and parenting. And I thought, well, I don't have any kids, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But then I started looking at both of these guests and all the information. I'm like, this is for everyone. So what did I say in the trailer, you guys? If you have kids, thinking about kids, know someone who has kids, this is the show for you. So welcome to the show. This is Dr. Paul. How are you?
Very well, Mia.
And I said your name right on the trailer, right?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Say it for us.
Dr. Paul Roumeliotis.
Well, that was the funny thing. I was telling Dr. Paul, I was snooping through all of the different shows he's done, and they know him so well as just Dr. Paul. Nobody says your last name.
It's because it's hard to pronounce, so that's how it started.
Just Dr. Paul. And then, of course, we have Dr. Susan Newman. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
It's great to see you. So, listen, I'm going to start off with the backpack. You guys, this week, I am not even going to try Comment Tracker because it broke it last week. Last week, you guys, the show started, I did one comment. I think it was from Brother Mick Sharp. And then after that, the tiara was gone, the lower third was gone, and no comments. So I am going to be looking over here to the side and reading your comments. But let me tell you who's in the audience that's waiting for you, Dr. Paul and Dr. Susan. We have One Great Life, Mel, Jamal is here, Scott Scowcroft, Rain, Mick Sharp, Roxanne Davenport, Susan Finch. We have all kinds of great people that are out there. So, and then let me see. Laura says she had the pleasure of working with both of these authors and actually met Dr. Paul at the Toronto Book Fair and chatted about child development. Susan knows her stuff about families. I love some of the topics we're going to get into about families, Susan. I think it's going to be fun.
So do I, obviously.
Right? That's why you wrote a book. And then make sure to look through the links that I posted because Dr. Susan, you just put out a new revised edition of a really famous book that you've had. And how long ago was that published?
It was originally published in 1993. And as I noticed the sweep of technology taking over family, I said it's time to update it because parents are losing their connections with their kids. Because being overscheduled and because of technology, the bonds between family members are weakening, and there's academic research that backs this up. It is a serious problem. So I brought Little Things Long Remembered back as a reminder and as an antidote to all the draw of technology within families.
I think it's great information for just adults as well, and then being plugged into your surroundings. But I bet we could do a whole show on that.
Probably, yeah.
I mean,
from grandparents to brand new parents, so they get off on the right track. It's definitely, whether you have 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour for holidays. I mean, I've covered it all, and it's broken in to make it easy for parents. It's broken into time frames. When you just have time for gestures, what shouldn't you forget to do? If you have a sick child home, there's a sick child section. There's a birthday section. Every holiday's covered. So,
what a clever way to break that up.
Parents need reminders. You're never at a loss of what to do.
Well, what we were saying in the green room, I was talking about looking at both of your books, Dr. Paul and Dr. Susan, and that what's great is that we have this mix of all this different information. And then, again, what were you saying, Dr. Paul? It really does take a village. So it doesn't matter if you don't have kids. You're around people that have children. Sure. These are people's kids that are going to be taking care of me. So I need to pay attention to it. So I do want to mention a couple more people. So this is why they're loving it. So Mike Bay says, I have 5 kids and I still have no clue. Looking forward to this. So, which is great. And then Scott does say he is a single dad of a 15-year-old. And, this is a must-see program as well. So, again, everyone, if you have any specific questions, please put them in there. I'll try and pull them out as well, because this is truly an Ask the Experts type of show. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to have each of my guests tell me about what they do, obviously, or give me a little bit more information about what you do and some of your personal info as well. So I'm going to start, Dr. Susan. Let's continue with you. So tell us more about you.
More about me. I'm a social psychologist. I write and study families and parenting specifically, and it could be if you have a newborn 2-year-old, or if you have a teen, or a lucky you, a college graduate who's coming back home. Those are some of the specific areas I've looked at and written books about, particularly Under One Roof again, when they're filtering back and now they're adults and how to deal with it. I write a parenting blog for Psychology Today, and I'm forever doing research. I'm researching right now on adult children who have problems with their parents' new partner. You know, the divorce rate still hovering around 50%. So parents are very likely to get a new partner, and adult children really have difficulty accepting that person. And so I'm researching, and if anybody's interested in being part of the survey, they can contact me. I'd love to talk to them about, you know, the whys, the wheres, their situation, and everything would be anonymous and confidential.
You know, and I checked around after you had sent me that email about that specific thing, this specific research, and I really haven't seen it. It is truly an issue, but I don't see it being discussed that much. So I think it is good, because I think some kids too probably feel a little guilty about feeling that way, like I need to buck up and not be so sensitive about it. But I think it's a pretty important issue.
Yeah, they stay loyal to one parent, and the other parent feels hurt, and the new parent feels left out, or it's not even a parent at that point. But the parent's new partner is discouraged. I mean, and this goes on for years and years and years, and there has to be, and there are ways to solve these issues, and my plan is to find them.
And I'll dumb it down. Just everybody needs to stop being so pissed off about it, right?
Get on with your own life.
Well, and I think it'll be interesting. I'd love to hear from the audience as well. Please pop your comments there, because we're just coming off the holiday season. I mean, talk about the high holy season of dysfunction. When everybody gets together, all these families, what you're talking
together. I mean, one of the big issues going back to the new book, Little Things Long Remembered, is everybody has these expectations that are way too high, and parents look for perfection, and they want the kids to act perfectly, they want the house to look perfect, and those are not goals that in the memory department for your children, those aren't the things they remember. So parents need to, I mean, it goes for birthday parties too, they need to calm down, stress less about this perfection and building memories, because what really sticks in their memory banks is often the hilarious, the mishaps, the spilled milk, the brown icing on the birthday cake, these crazy things that you can't predict. So I think that's where parents get themselves enormously stressed for no reason.
You know what was great to start that initially was Irma Bombeck. Like, you remember way back in the day, she was sort of the first person to talk about the imperfection of all of that. I feel like she sort of just paved the way. And here's the tough thing, and we're getting into the discussion a little bit, but I think social media makes it even more difficult for people, because you see all these picture-perfect photos, things on all these different social media channels. Everybody's only really posting sort of the perfect stuff. Right? And so
no one's posting the dog eating the brand new slippers that somebody got. That is true. Perfection is just a big waste of parents' time and energy. They need to stress less about that and think more about turning off technology and connecting on a one-to-one basis, even if it's for 10 minutes a day. And parents are often the culprits. You're the role model for your child. So if you have your smartphone in your hand 20 of the 24 hours and it's next to your bed when you go to sleep and it's at the dinner table, your children are going to model exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely.
I mean, the great thing about technology to me is that the average age, and I'm sure no one can guess this, that a child is able to use an iPad. Would you like to guess?
Oh, it's going to scare me.
Yeah, it will. 11 months.
What? I was going to go 2. I should have guessed. So, and I think, I think I saw you post something. You guys go over and check out Dr. Susan's website, and it showed the picture of the little one, sort of like face almost planted
right.
on the iPad.
Can't walk, can't talk, but can operate an iPad, so, or at least turn it on and off. So that's telling us something, or telling parents something.
I would think it just from the electronic standpoint, the Wi-Fi of this forming brain. And Dr. Paul, I know you'll definitely get into that as well. But that cannot be good for them. I'm going to have to rewind the tape and listen to what you first said when you were talking was about the toughest thing for parents. The best thing they can do is drop perfection. I mean, you just need to drop the mic and walk off the stage with that, because that is sage advice. A couple more comments. Debbie had posted this earlier, Debbie Huntington. She says, can you say military school? She's read some of Dr. Newman's work. It was part of their training as therapeutic foster parents.
Wonderful.
So, right? There you go. There's your sign. You're on the right path. And Sherilyn is here. Hi, girlfriend. She says she has a 9-year-old boy who struggles with being more intelligent than his peers. Doesn't seem like it'd be an issue, but he expects everyone to keep up with him, and he's easily frustrated when they don't. She also has an 11-year-old daughter who's severely ADHD. Never a dull moment in her house, but you know what? She keeps it real, so kudos to her on that too. Kirsten Hancock, she's a mom of 3 and an educator. And if you guys didn't see, I posted a link. Kirsten's company they have a new pacifier that debuted at Consumer Electronics this week. So
I saw the link. I will make it a point to go check it out.
Oh, I'm such a geek on tech, so I love that too. So, well, thank you for being on the show. We're going to get more into the topics that you brought up. Let's talk about Dr. Paul. You have you're something else. Let me tell you guys, Dr. Paul's resume that has everything where he's appeared, what he's written in, is about 50 pages long. You are the man. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mia.
And the very first online pediatrician, right?
Yes, that's right. My career started back in the late 1970s, early 80s, where I paid my way through medical school being a professional musician and producer. And so that sort of jilted my career path into wanting to teach and use media technology to teach parents about child health. And I'm also a pediatrician. And so back in the when I was in medical school and a resident, people called me Dr. Paul because they couldn't call me. They couldn't pronounce my last name. So that's where it was born, actually. And so I realized very quickly, dealing with parents with chronic, of children who had chronic disease, newborns, the whole spectrum of pediatrics, which is sort of, a prenatal to postnatal to adolescent medicine, that one of the major, I think the important things that a pediatrician role was really to educate parents in an anticipatory way. So we called, we had the anticipatory guidance. And I knew very early on that the more parents knew about what to do about their child, whether it's just bringing the child up, in terms of child care, neonatal care, or with, any problem ranging from, ADHD to asthma to any chronic illness, the more they knew, the more comfortable they were. So I coined the term, knowledge is comfort when it comes to your child's health and wellness. Wow. And so I started to create books and videos back in the late 80s, early 90s. And the internet came along, and I figured it would be great to put my content on the internet to reach more people. So in 1995, I was the first, I think, physician in the world to be online on my website, drpaul.com. And since then, I've got millions of people that have visited my website. But I was frustrated at that time because all the videos and audio, multimedia that I was doing at that time was not available online because you couldn't stream. And then progressively, as things streamed and went forward, I started to do more online, and so that's why a lot of the early work that I've done was more on, media that was available then, which was television, radio, and so on. But my main sort of belief in life is that you need to, as a parent, understand your child's needs. And about 7 years ago, I shifted my focus from pediatrics to public health. So I work in a public health setting as well, and I do realize the population health needs, and do realize that what happens in the first couple of years of life can mold a child's future, both in terms of development, school success, psychological and mental illness, but also we now know that a lot of the things that you do early on in a child's life, prenatally as well, 9 months prenatally and 18 months postnatally, even more. However, the first 27 months of life can actually, we know scientifically now that the genes can change, the way they express themselves can change, the way the brain develops can be affected by social issues, by being neglected, by not being taken care of, and so on, abuse, and so on. And so we do know that if you now focus on your child in the first few years of life, and it's not to say to forget about the rest of the stages, but I'm saying the importance of it, you can make a difference in what we call the life course perspective. So things that you do now will benefit your child 30, 40 years down the line. And we do know that children who come up who are neglected, their brain doesn't develop properly, and for a variety of reasons related to genetic changes, epigenetic modifications of the genes that we know, and the way that the brain doesn't properly function or develop, you can get hormonal changes and all kinds of things that, you know, to a layperson, it means that we're causing chronic disease at the first few years of life, but only see it 40 years down the line. And so, and that's why I wrote this book. And this book really is a culmination of all of the articles and TV programs and videos that I've written, the hundreds of that I've done, that I thought had to be put down in a sort of a logical way. But I really spend a lot of time in the first sort of 30, 40 pages of my book talking about why I called the book Baby Comes Home, the guide to a healthy and well, a parent's guide to a healthy and well, health and wellness in the first 18 months. Why I chose the first 18 months is because that's where you can make a maximum impact. And I explain it, and I explain a lot of the science that we know. Obviously, we also want to prevent things. So I'm talking about a lot of prevention, doing things proactively in order to prevent things down the line. And that's what pediatrics is all about. So, of course, I talk about immunization and you know, wellness and nutrition and taking care of baby. But I think the important things are those kind of soft things that you need to be doing. Hug your child. And what I'd like, from the sort of the social point of view and sort of political point of view, if you'd like, I'd like to have a community or a society that allows parents to hug their child. That is very simple. Hug their newborn baby. And that means a lot, because that actually translates into make sure that they can have the, you know, they're not poor, they're living under conditions that don't distract them from doing that, right? So that's a political message. And as a public health leader, I work with politicians and try to look at policy that allows parents to be able to optimally take care of their baby, especially during the first, you know, what I call very sensitive first, you know, few years of life. And so by doing that and embellishing all of the other modern scientific things that we know about immunization and so on, you can assure that your child reaches his or her optimum potential. You know, every child has a potential that in many situations is blunted because of, you know, circumstances beyond that baby's control. And at the same time, you can increase the child's prosperity, decrease the rate of, you know, mental illness and chronic disease as well, which, as you know right now with the aging population, is a burden on our healthcare system, both in North America and worldwide. And so that's why that's my passion, and that's why I like to be able to share that word, so it affects everybody. So in the community setting, you said you don't have no kids, but you know, inevitably you're going to be in contact with kids. You're going to be an aunt. You're going to, you know, somebody's going to be an uncle. There's going to be a cousin, and so on. I think it's an important message that babies who are cuddled, who are taken care of early on, that's a very important and I think imperative part of their nurturing, as well as all of the other things. And this is one of the first books that really puts it together, both from the physical point of view. The other thing that I do is, because I was an asthma specialist when I was practicing pediatrics. Asthma is a chronic disease that affects about 20% of kids. And parents will, by a 1-hour educational visit, can control their child's asthma. The asthma didn't go away. It's because parents understood it. And so I've added about 100 pages in this book about the common childhood illnesses that likely will occur in the first, you know, couple of years of life. So parents could know and understand, not to replace the, their healthcare providers' treatment, but just to understand, because again, knowledge is comfort when it comes to child health and wellness.
I love that because so what looks, I know what you're doing is you're actually empowering everyone. You're giving them all this information. I just want to show everybody. I printed off because I got your book. This is the table of contents, which is amazing because it really is. I mean, we were saying in the green room too that this is great for everyone. So this is a book that people can have, and then they give it to grandparents, caretakers, right? Just people that are in their life, because it is so detailed. Soy-based formulas, food safety precautions, vital signs, crying patterns. The purple period of crying. What is that, by the way? Is that when they're just crying their face off?
Actually, that's an interesting one. That is, I was working in Eastern Ontario, and we were actually told by the coroner that our area has high rates of shaken baby syndrome. Shaken baby syndrome is when babies cry so much that the parents are so frustrated they shake the baby. Right. And we know that that causes brain damage and can actually kill a child. And so I started doing some research, and sort of serendipitously, one of my colleagues and mentors, Dr. Ron Barr, actually from McGill and now at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, discovered that he was an expert in crying patterns of kids. And he went to a child abuse seminar, and he noticed that the pattern at which shaken baby occurred coincided with that period of crying. And he calls it the purple period of crying. And purple sounds for a few things: periodic, urgent. There's an acronym, I keep forgetting them, but that's what it stands for. But basically, it peaks at 2 months of age and goes away by around 4 months of age. And that's the period in which we see the babies are being shaken. So what he did, working and he did some research in communities, he created a video that was simply given to parents at birth, saying, it's normal for a baby to cry, this is what you can do, and so on, don't shake the baby. And it's shown that he's actually decreased the rate of shaken baby syndrome by just educating parents that this period will occur. It's not, you can't do anything about it. It's almost, I revisited colic, if you'd like. It's a modern version of colic. So and so that makes a difference. So we are, in my area where I work in Eastern Canada, we actually deliver those DVDs to parents, and they review it at the hospital.
And I know we do have commercials here in the States as well that never shake a baby, and that really has only come up in the last couple of years, but I'm sure it's been something that's been around. They just couldn't pinpoint it. So how interesting. But again, this is what I'm loving, because you're giving a ton of information, but again, you said you want people to also, the knowledge is comfort. They can go talk to their doctor, and they can create sort of what works best for them, because there's of course controversy. Now let's talk about this, because you mentioned about 20%. The 20% rate for asthma. Now, and I'm really big on the eco-wellness. We can get into this if everybody's comfortable, but what do you think about more of the environmental type, these outside things now with high fructose corn syrup, and we didn't have that as kids, for sure. Well, there's a lot of different things that are now introduced into our environments that are very difficult to avoid. Well, and both of you jump into that, because now we're in the meat of it. So.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll in terms of, if you look at the environmental factors for asthma, for example, we do know that there are environmental factors that do play a role, although there are genetic predispositions. And we know that about 10 to 20% of kids are born with the asthma tendency, if you'd like. And as such, they do have a predisposition. But we do know that if they're exposed to certain, allergens in the air, they will develop asthma more. So that percentage within that range is increased when they're exposed to things. So the sort of indoor things that we see, believe it or not, have nothing to do with environmental fumes. Has to do with cigarette smoke. Cigarette smoke, for example, is a major trigger of asthma in kids. And we know that. And the other thing that we see in kids is dust mites, indoor pollution, where, not indoor pollution, but indoor allergens, if you'd like. Dust mites have actually increased in concentration. Why has it been going on? A, because over the last 30 years, we've become energy conscious, and we've been isolating our homes more. So they're more airtight, and the dust and everything that's in the home, it increases. So we think that it irritates, it actually challenges the babies more. Secondly, what we see is that from the outdoor environment, we certainly, I think, see effects of air pollution. We do know that pollution, if you take a child's cells from his nose, for example, and put sort of a pollutant on it, you will actually incite that cell to become allergic. And so I do believe that external environment plays a role as well. Countries like Indonesia, for example, have terrible pollution and have high rates of asthma as well. So you're born with a tendency, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get it. But the higher you're exposed to both the internal and external environmental factors, the higher your chances are that you're going to develop the asthma.
Dr. Susan, jump in on that.
Well, where I will jump in, I'll jump back a little bit, is the smoking example that Dr. Paul gave. We, as parents, we are our children's role model, and therefore, whatever we do, dust mites, if we're not keeping the house vacuumed and cleaned, that's not helping our kids. I mean, whatever we're doing as parents, we think our children aren't absorbing it, but they're actually watching every single thing we're doing. There is no question. I used the example before of technology, and when you're using technology all the time, there was a study out of Northwestern University that talked about when parents watch or excessive consumers of TVs, iPads, and any of the streaming devices, their children follow suit exactly. The pattern is the same. And that sort of thing is not good for your kids, because they are going to, other studies confirm that this overwhelming use of media, I mean, some parents are using devices as in place of sitting down and reading their infants and toddlers books. And we know, and Dr. Paul can definitely confirm this, that children's language development is increased not by an iPad, not by lending that child your smartphone, by actually hearing conversations with the parent. And this goes on into the toddler and beyond years. Children need human contact. They need their parents, they need their peers, and they need their extended family that help them develop socially. I mean, it is that kind of social involvement that gives them emotional stability, as well as academics, improves their academics and everything about their lives and their health. They need to be outside. They need fresh air. They do not need to be sitting in front of a TV or a computer 24 hours a day. And this is a real problem when you get into the teen years.
Right.
We've seen that teens' emotional connection to their parents drops quite markedly when their kids are glued to their iPhones and texting and emailing, and so that's one factor. The other factor is it's the multitasking is not good for the brain, for the developing brain. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we want to minimize or certainly reduce, and of course you can't reduce a child's time on a computer if he's doing his homework, but you can have rules about at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock, the computer goes off, the cell phone comes out of the bedroom. And parents would do well to follow suit and everybody have a place in the house where they put their cell phone at night. I mean, nobody needs you at 2 o'clock in the morning.
You need a cell phone bowl in your house, right?
Right.
Mia,
Same thing at your dinner.
Yes, Dr. Paul.
Yes, Mia, I'd like to comment. Certainly the reading is an issue. I write in my book The Benefits of Reading, and one of the things that struck me is one of my colleagues brought up a very important fact, that the amount of words a baby listens to, face-to-face, listens to at 3 years of age determines whether or not the child will do well at school. So I really encourage parents to read to their child or talk to their child face-to-face from day one of life. And as a matter of fact, there's a discrepancy between poorer families and richer families in terms of how many words their babies have heard at 3 years of age. And it's in the millions of words less. And it's not only poorer families as well. If you look at the subpopulation of those families, it's families who are well-to-do but are running around, have a couple of jobs, never stay home, and their child is not spoken to, is not stimulated. So it really has to do with human stimulation. And I agree with Dr. Susan. We have lost that human aspect of raising our kids. You know, computers, televisions, iPads, and so on does not replace that one-on-one. It doesn't do the same what's called sculpting effect of the brain, especially in the first couple of years of life. And that's why the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children don't be exposed to those things before 2 years of age anyway. And after that, be quite careful about that. But it's that playing time. Get down and play with your kids. You know, do all that as much as you can. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you're poor or rich. You can do those things. You know, back in the days where people, because I give a lot of these lectures to people when I talk about poverty and, you know, the effects, and they say, well, you know, I grew up in a family of 12 kids, and, you know, I'm okay. You know, I turned out all right. I went to school. Well, you know what happened in those days? They were living in a home with, you know, 12 people, and the baby was passed around. Well, yeah, that's right, but they were in a community. So the baby was passed around from one to another, and never neglected, always stimulated. Right? So, so there are ways that you can, very cost-effective, cheap ways, you know, that you can actually, you know, stimulate your baby, and so, you know, that's why breastfeeding is great, because that's the contact that you have all the time. But going back to the reading and stimulation, it's important throughout, obviously, but it's ultimately very important because we now understand those social interactions, the ability to relate to peers. Self-control are all developed in the first couple of years of life.
And here's a couple comments. The audience is going nuts. They're loving what you're saying. My brother Jesse says one of the best things he ever did was hold off on getting a Xbox or a gaming system until the kids were older, and even then they keep it in the living room, and it really helped his kids get used to going outside. A lot of people are saying that as well, and that is frightening. You're saying that it starts at 11 months too, so that scares me. But here's what cracks me up. I'm old enough to be at that age that we stood up in the front seat. Our parents were smoking, sometimes with the car windows up. I mean, it was kind of an old school thing where there was a lot less to worry about. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest as well, so it was easy to get good food. So now it's so complicated for parents. I honestly can't imagine what it would be like to navigate feeding them, the care, the comparison thing. It's Dr. Susan, I want to jump into that. That's got to be the hardest thing. One is overwhelm for parents. Two, they're seeing what everybody else is doing. There's a constant comparison. There's keeping up with the Joneses that's off the chain now, right?
Oh, it's off the charts completely. What I call, we're in an era of competitive parenting, is what I feel. And what that does is it eats into, I mean, and this starts in the age group that Dr. Paul is talking about, very young. We being parents are trying to give their children a competitive edge at a very early age. And that reduces the amount of time that their children are involved with them because or have time to handle everything, because they are carpooling to this activity and that activity, and the child has no downtime to actually go outside and play, no downtime to sit and read a book, and that's where parents are getting in trouble. I mean, one of the things I always recommend is A, lower your expectations for your child, and B, cut out some of these activities. When parents just have to give their child the latest computer technology, they're worried that their children are going to say, oh, my parents didn't give me this or that as an adult. Believe me, when they're on a therapist's couch 20 years from now, they're not going to remember the gift they didn't get or the event they weren't permitted to go to. They're going to find something else to fault you for sure. So if parents could reduce the amount of time they spend carting their kids and worrying about what college they're going to get into. Actually, on Psychology Today, I wrote an article, Preparing Your Toddler for College, which talks all about this. It talks about this inane pressure between parents to kickstart their kids, and they're not doing their children any favors. I mean, teens today are reporting as much stress as their parents have, and that's pretty frightening.
Yeah.
Jump in on that, Dr. Paul.
Well, I'll tell you the two things. When we look at the stress in the workplace, we see it in the younger kids. We see it in the 20-year-olds, and that's reflecting exactly what Dr. Susan said. And I was, I'm thinking you see it in the older generation, 40, 50-year-old. No, we're actually seeing it peak in the 20-year-old age range, which is an exact reflection of what Dr. Susan was saying. And in terms of competitiveness, I can tell you that when I was writing the book, I wrote a section on toilet training. Now, a baby is not ready to toilet train before 2-3 years of age, physiologically. So my editor, when I was writing the book, said, why are you writing about toilet training if it's for meant for kids less than 18 months of age? I said, because I've got parents at 6 months of age asking me how to toilet train their baby.
No.
Just to show you that, or 9 months of age. So I actually stress in the book that you have time, not to worry. That's why I wrote about it, because I actually get parents asking me, how can I toilet train my 9-month-old, my 6-month-old?
Wow.
And so on.
Now that is competitive parenting.
Exactly. Now there, and so I also get the other ones. My child's 9 months of age or 12 months of age. He's not walking. My neighbor's child's walking. My first child walked. And the other thing too is you can't compare one child to another. And I talk about it when I talk about in terms of the behavior of a child, the characteristics of a child, and even the growth patterns of a child. Very often I get parents say, my first child was well, slept well, and ate well. I had no problems raising that child. My second child is different. What have I done wrong? Nothing. Kids are different.
People are different. And this has to be the hardest thing, right? Of just the expectation. And Dr. Susan, thank you so much for that, of starting that part of the conversation of just letting everybody just take a step back, right, and not have it be so much. And I would think that it seems to be getting younger and younger now that that the kids have all these things to do, but I would see it sounds like 10, 11, 12 is when they really start hitting the gas, right? There's so many things that parents, you're right, are just carting kids around all the time.
Yeah, there's so much pressure. But back to the toilet training for just a minute.
Yeah, let's go back to that one. That is great.
I love that one. When my son was not toilet trained, and they wouldn't take him into nursery school if he got toilet trained, my husband was beside himself, and I said, calm down, he'll get there. He's not going to college in diapers, I promise you. And, he did it himself, when he was quite ready. But even the nursery schools put pressure on parents to get them to go ahead and get your child toilet trained before that child's ready. And you're right, Mia, as we get into 10, 11, 12-year-olds, the pressure becomes so intense. There's so much homework. There are so many after-school activities. If you're on a travel soccer team, for example, and you're on the travel soccer team, the town soccer team, and you may play for your school, when is there time to get that homework done? And that affects eating and eating habits. Kids are eating peanut butter and jelly on the back seat of the car. So that goes to, when do we have dinner? So dinner, everybody talks about how important dinner is, but it isn't even the food as much as the time to talk. And what many studies have repeated is that if you have dinner 3 to 4 nights a week, your children are much less likely to abuse alcohol, use marijuana, and engage in risky behavior. So it isn't, everyone talks about diet and food and health. There are bigger issues involved with carving out that time to have dinner together. In the long run, it's going to pay off. And leave your cell phones out of the dining room.
I agree. I just posted last week on my Twitter. a study that actually confirmed that. They actually looked at, did a survey of mothers using cell phones at the table, at the dinner table, and it did show that it really interfered with their bonding and so on. And so we do know that, and as a result of all this busy running around, we're actually looking at the family dinner table time not there anymore. And so that is a sacred time as far as I'm concerned. That should be something that parents strive for, because as Dr. Susan said, there are many psychological benefits to the family, to bonding, and to learning and discussing and all those things. That's a really good time to do it. But we also know that it is also contributing to childhood obesity, which, as you know, childhood obesity is on the rise. And one of the things that we see is this correlation with several things. Number one, watching more than 2 hours of things on a screen a day is correlated with higher BMI rates, which is a measure of overweightness. And number two, we also know that all of the lack of family bonding, families that tend to eat together tend to have less overweightness, less overweight kids. And so it contributes to that. And so it's not surprising that we're sedentary. We're, everybody's, sitting down watching a screen or television, and at the same time, we're too busy to prepare that family meal. So we're going out and getting fast food, processed food, and hence here you go. There's your obesity epidemic.
There's one other aspect to that. When you go out to eat, just continuing Dr. Paul's thoughts, when you go out to eat, a parent, especially parents with young children, their tendency is to hand over the smartphone, the iPad, and so the children are busy. And there was a study done about a year ago that showed the children were worse behaved when they had all this equipment and their parents weren't paying any attention to them, because in fact what they really wanted was their parents' attention. And so that's good for caretakers to know. I mean, just trying to amuse the child with a device is not helping the child in many instances. And a group of teens were asked, what they found objectionable about technology. And they also, the first study was with younger children, this one was teenagers. They were trying, they really want their parents' attention, and it's hard to get.
I read a book recently called The 5 Love Languages, and it's interesting. It's about relationships, but they had at the end of the book, which I thought was kind of cool, of figuring out what your child's love language is. Is it quality time? Is it acts of service? Is it buying gifts? Like figuring out what it is that they really love. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It sounds like you're moving towards that as well, or you're talking about that too, of like just spending time with the kids, figuring out what it is that they like too. You can play to that as well. But the biggest thing I'm catching too is unplugging. Is the unplugging.
Yes, and also when you're playing with your children,
being engaged, right? Like,
one of the things I talk about in Little Things Long Remembered is that if you're playing a game with your children that you really can't stand, that you don't like, they're going to know it. So when you play with them, they're very sensitive to their parents' feelings. When you are playing with them, choose games that you, at a bare minimum, can tolerate, because they will know that. If Monopoly's not your thing, go for a quick game of Chutes and Ladders.
That's a great advice, too. I love that. And Elaine is in the audience. Hi, Elaine Neighboring. She says, yes, reading with the kids. And I was thinking of this, and she actually nails it. Real books. Not Kindle books, right? Of like the actual physical, reading the book, showing the picture, that type of thing. I think it's great for kids as well. So we're getting at 44 past the hour. Real quick, can you each give me just something? It's such an overwhelming thing for parents. Can you tell me what you think would be a great way for parents to get more involved in community so they don't feel so isolated on raising their kids or in the information, so they don't feel overwhelmed with the competitive, but they're bonding their community? Give me advice on that.
Yeah, reach out. You can reach out through play groups to find friends. I think making friends as a parent is really important. Friends can be your sounding board, and cultivate those friendships. You'll invite the people over, have dinner with their husbands and wives, because ultimately those peers and connections and the children who are interacting, often they become lifelong friends. You know, that's particularly important for the only child, for people who have one child, build that social network. But it's really important for mothers and new mothers who are trying to find their way and find out what's important for them.
I love it. That is great advice. How about you, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think that in terms of the things that I tell parents, especially of newborn babies and younger babies, is that there are a lot of changes that are occurring, notwithstanding your pre-existing before baby's life. You know, whatever the concerns and challenges are, work-related, family-related, and so on. You know, aside from that, baby comes home, especially if it's your first baby. Baby comes home, you don't know what to do with the baby, you're challenged, you don't know the baby's routines, and so on. So I would advise those parents to read ahead, look as much information, speak to their healthcare practitioner, or speak to their, you know, group peers or other mothers and, you know, and cousins or uncles who've had kids in the past, so to kind of see what they can expect, what's normal or not, because they're kind of overwhelmed with trying to figure out the baby, and that's very hard. So I think that, again, that's where knowledge is comfort comes into play. You know, the more you know about it, and the more you know about it ahead of time is best. That's why I recommend that people read my book or other similar books before the baby comes home. And secondly, we also recognize that mothers can have, for a variety of reasons, well, they can have some postpartum depression. There are some things that we need to look at as well. Recognize those, have you know, the ability to recognize those, or have a friend to support you or a spouse to support you, and so on. But very importantly, they need to take some time out themselves, because they will burn themselves out. And especially when a baby is crying a lot and colicky and so on, they need to be able to, you know, say you know, the spouse or whoever, the partner will take over and take a break or sleep one night, you know, so they won't have to get up to feed the baby and so on. If they do that in a sort of planned way, they'll be able to offset some of the many things that we see. I see very frustrated parents. You know, when I used to work in the emergency room, they'd come in 2, 3 in the morning, the baby's crying. You know, they were sicker than the baby was. You know, just emotionally drained. You know, than the baby was. And you know, very often they ask me, can I give my baby's not sleeping? Can you give the baby a pill so he can sleep? But we don't give baby sleeping pills. The parents probably need one, or need a similar approach. They need to sleep, not the baby. No, but you know, that's sort of, you know, but in a way that, so they need to connect. And I think what Dr. Susan said as well is that community. That's why I talked about community. It takes a community to raise a child. They need to have that network around. And I can tell you that in areas where I work at, the areas where the parents, especially there are a lot of single mothers that we have in certain areas, those kids don't develop as normally as others. And there's a disparity between the rich and poor, and that tells you a lot. If you go to areas like Sweden, Norway, where they have an ability to really prevent, teach, support the mothers and the parents, their kids don't have any developmental delays as compared to other kids, you know, poor versus rich. And so there needs to be, that's why I keep saying it's the community. It's everybody around you that can support you. And as a parent, you know, get to know your child, empower yourself, but also recognize your limitations and seek help.
And one more thing, and then
can I add one thing to that?
Yes.
As your child gets older and you know what you're doing, beware of other parents who are telling you you're doing something wrong, or you have completely different parenting styles. Go with what you feel is right for your child, and don't be pressured or bullied into changing what you feel in your heart is the exact right thing to do for your child, because as Dr. Paul said, and we all know, every child is an individual and different.
Yeah.
That's perfect, and that segues in what I was going to say. Thank you for saying that, because I love what you have a link. So go over to Susan's website, The Book of No, 250 Ways to Say It and Mean It and Stop People-Pleasing Forever. Perfect segue for that. Talk about that real quick, and then we're going to wrap up, because this is what you guys are talking about. This one again, not bullying, not doing things of, and it's great for everybody. I'm going to read that book, because I told you I took the test and was like, fail. And I think I'm pretty good. But I looked at it, I'm like, I said it's
There is a test on the Book of No website that everybody should take, because you're going to realize that your mother, your mother-in-law, your best friend, co-workers are taking advantage of you if you don't have the ability to draw some lines.
Yes.
And learn how to say, gee, I'd really like to help you out, but I can't do that today, or I can't do that next week. And if you are helping someone, define the amount of time you have available. And it's divided into family, work, personal life, even these odd people like your hairdresser who tell you, we need to cut off all that hair today. How do you say no and really live your life less stress so you have more time for your family and your kids?
Thank you so much for putting that together, by the way, because I think it is such a great key. So you have all the information that Dr. Paul has in his book. Dr. Susan has tons of articles and books, and then you add in the thing you can do to take care of yourself, because you do get, I mean, that's the thing I get from just seeing so much on parenting and on social media, that it can be incredibly overwhelming. Definitely. All right, you guys ready for the segue? Everybody in the audience knows what it's going to be. But I do this section called What's On. And sometimes I do What's on the Bottom, and I make people show what they're wearing on the bottom. But I want to know, because you two are such smarty pants, what's on your reading list?
What's on our, pardon? Or what?
On your reading list. What's on your to-read list, or what are you reading right now, since you're both authors? Like your personal reading list.
I am reading in the fiction area We Are Not Ourselves by Matthew Thomas. It's a story of, it goes for, cut through generations. It's fabulous. I'm only 100 pages into it, so I can't give you a full synopsis.
Excellent.
And I'm reading a book called, nonfiction called Teenagers 101, written by a teacher who has been in the school system, I think, for over 25 years. She really gets teenagers. So I'm brushing up on my teenage knowledge.
Here's something I love. I've learned about experts, and especially a lot of people I've run into the last 6 months. Experts are experts because they're also checking stuff out all the time. You're always learning about something new. So we can all do well to take that advice. How about you, Dr. Paul? What are you reading now?
Well, right now I'm reading several journal articles actually around the new science of epigenetics and how the early life changes and some of the social aspects of that. And so it's a lot of journals and articles, not one specific text that talks about it. The text that I'm reading has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It has to do with the story of Led Zeppelin. And it's a great book that I got for Christmas. It's a fascinating story about the group Led Zeppelin. I'm a rocker at heart, so that was my favorite band, and I read that because you need to have both sides of your brain working.
Okay, did anybody expect that one?
No, I don't think so.
That's right. Can you tell us real quick? I know you have a little bit of a diverse background. Tell us what else you do in your spare time.
What else I do?
Go ahead. Yeah, Dr. Paul.
Oh, Dr. Paul. Basically, I take care of... I'm on call all the time, so I always have my BlackBerry beside me because I work for the government and I'm on call for public health emergencies. You know, I can deal with that. I love to play drums, and I play music. I haven't done it in about a year now, but I had a band and we raised a lot of money for charities, children's charities. That's what I love to do, and I love to spend time with my little dog Leo.
I love it.
With my wife as well and my family and my kids. But we enjoy playing games. My kids are young adults, still living at home, going to school, and we play games and have dinner together. And I think it's very important, and I think it's good modeling for them.
I love it. I think one of your kids actually liked the status the other day. How about you, Dr. Susan? What is your, because you're such an expert, what is your downtime type of thing, or should be your favorite thing?
My downtime is primarily gardening, but not in the flower sense. I don't do any flowers. I need to eat what I grow. Excellent. So I only do vegetables. That's one thing I do. I also play tennis. And what else do I do? Work out. Oh, so boring. I don't play the drums.
He does kind of have us beat on that, doesn't he?
No, I'm basically a gardener, and I like to cook.
I love it. And now I'm going to segue because we're almost at the end of the hour. Tell me what you're bat crap crazy about. Tell me something you're crazy about, Dr. Susan, and then tell me your call to action. What you want us to do.
I am crazy about, and this is one of the things I do. It's not crazy about. I work with abused and neglected children, and I think we all need to pay more attention to how many children are suffering and help as much as we can. And I think more people, it's called, the organization is called CASA in some states and Guardian Ad Litems in other states. And as many people as can volunteer, you get one case at a time, and I really believe that is helping so many children who otherwise don't really have a good shot at getting out in the world and being successful. And that's one way we can do it, and that's probably what I'm most passionate about.
Oh, you are bat crap crazy about that in a good way. Thank you for saying that, because I was thinking of that when you were both talking. And these are just, you know, empowering parents with their kids, but their generations and tons of kids out there, foster kids, like some of our audience had said, that do not have this. So, yeah, I agree. Get out there and mentor, foster, volunteer, whatever you can do. So thank you for that. And then everyone needs to go to, is it Dr. Susan Newman, PhD? Or Susan Newman, PhD. You have a ton of information on your website, so y'all get yourself over there, and it's not just about kids. It is everything. It looks, you have marriage advice, parenting advice, all kind. Yeah, jiggly thighs, six-pack abs, and media girls. That's one of your things. I love that. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I so appreciate all the information you've given to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And how about you, Dr. Paul? What are you bat crap crazy about? What do you want us to go do?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm bat crap crazy about the fact that 20% of kids in North America, if not more in certain areas, live in poverty. And a lot of them don't even have breakfast, you know, go to school on an empty stomach. And I'm very passionate about that. And I do believe that it's a societal thing, and it's a call to action for everybody to help in any way they can, either to, you know, help the charities that feed these kids, but also at a larger scale to be able to, you know, speak to government, look at policies and so on, to be able to eradicate childhood poverty in North America. You know, we don't spend the money that we need to support our kids in North America. I'm talking Canada and the United States, and it's just devastating, the effects of poverty, because, as I said, and especially in a child. So when I give a talk on poverty, I give it through childhood development lens and show the effects, the long-term effects. And so I think as a society, we need to not tolerate poverty.
Get engaged, party people. It's right in your backyard, and it's what community is all about. If we can raise the consciousness level for all of our community, it's a better place to be. I do want to make a quick comment that our brother Tom Collins has joined late to the party, and he wanted to know if we have any advice for grandparenting. So, Tom, I'm going to have both of our experts pop in on the comments, because that is a great question as well. But I'm loving it. I think everything that was discussed today can be used for parents, grandparents, aunts, brothers, sisters, everything. So I really appreciate it. So that's it for us. I have Dr. Paul Ruminatis. See, I almost got it. And Dr. Susan Newman, who really brought the get our learn on today. So I appreciate you both. Thank you so much, everyone. See you later.
Bye.
Shouldn't you forget to do? If you have a sick child home, there's a sick child section. There's a birthday section. Every holiday's covered. So
what a clever way to break that up.
Parents need reminders. You're never at a loss of what to do.
Well, what we were saying in the green room, I was talking about looking at both of your books, Dr. Paul and Dr. Susan, and that what's great is that we have this mix of all this different information. And then, again, what were you saying, Dr. Paul? It really does take a village. So it doesn't matter if you don't have kids, you're around people that have children. Sure. These are people's kids that are going to be taking care of me. So I need to pay attention to it. So I do want to mention a couple more people. So this is why they're loving it. So Mike Bay says, I have 5 kids and I still have no clue. Looking forward to this. So, which is great. And then Scott does say he is a single dad of a 15-year-old, and you know, this is a must-see program as well. So again, everyone, if you have any specific questions, please put them in there. I'll try and pull them out as well, because this is truly an Ask the Experts type of show. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to have each of my guests tell me about what they do, obviously, or give me a little bit more information about what you do and some of your personal info as well. So oh yeah, you guys are hearing it. Welcome, welcome. I'm Mia Voss, and you are watching and listening to the Mia Connect Power Chat. I'm Mia Voss, and I have two amazing guests. And here's the great thing. Laura Fabiani, first of all, we have to give her a shout out because she's the reason that I know both of these guests. So let's all clap for her. Are you ready? Laura Fabiani told me about both of these guests, and both of them are experts in childcare and parenting. And I thought, well, I don't have any kids, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But then I started looking at both of these guests and all the information. I'm like, this is for everyone. So what did I say in the trailer, you guys? If you have kids, thinking about kids, know someone who has kids, this is the show for you. So welcome to the show. This is Dr. Paul. How are you?
Very well, Mia.
So, and I said your name right on the trailer, right?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Say it for us.
Dr. Paul Roumeliotis.
Well, that was the funny thing I was telling Dr. Paul. I was snooping through all of the different shows he's done, and they know him so well as just Dr. Paul. Nobody says your last name.
It's because it's hard to pronounce, so that's how it started.
Just Dr. Paul. And then, of course, we have Dr. Susan Newman. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
It's great to see you. So, listen, I'm going to start, Dr. Susan. Let's continue with you. So, tell us more about you.
More about me. I'm a social psychologist. I write and study families and parenting specifically, and it could be if you have a newborn 2-year-old or if you have a teen or a, lucky you, a college graduate who's coming back home. Those are some of the specific areas I've looked at and written books about, particularly Under One Roof again when they're filtering back and now they're adults and how to deal with it. I write a parenting blog for Psychology Today, and I'm forever doing research. I'm researching right now on adult children who have problems with their parents' new partner. You know, the divorce rate still hovering around 50%. So parents are very likely to get a new partner, and adult children really have difficulty accepting that person, and so I'm researching, and if anybody's interested in being part of the survey. To start off with the backpack, you guys, this week I am not even going to try Comment Tracker because it broke it last week. Last week, you guys, the show started, I did one comment. I think it was from Brother Mick Sharp. And then after that, the tiara was gone, the lower third was gone, and no comments. So I am going to be looking over here to the side and reading your comments. But let me tell you who's in the audience that's waiting for you, Dr. Paul and Dr. Susan. We have One Great Life, Mel, Jamal is here, Scott Scowcroft, Rain, Mick Sharp, Roxanne Davenport, Susan Finch. We have all kinds of great people that are out there. So, and then let me see. Laura says she had the pleasure of working with both of these authors and actually met Dr. Paul at the Toronto Book Fair and chatted about child development. Susan knows her stuff about families. I love some of the topics we're going to get into about families, Susan. I think it's going to be fun. So do I, obviously.
Right? That's why we wrote a book. And then make sure to look through the links that I posted because Dr. Susan, you just put out a new revised edition of a really famous book that you've had. And how long ago was that published?
It was originally published in 1993. And as I noticed the sweep of technology taking over family, I said it's time to update it because parents are losing their connections with their kids because being overscheduled. And because of technology, the bonds between family members are weakening, and there's academic research that backs this up. It is a serious problem. So I brought Little Things Long Remembered back as a reminder and as an antidote to all the draw of technology within families.
I think it's great information for just adults as well, and then being plugged into your surroundings. But I bet we could do a whole show on that.
Probably, yeah.
I mean,
from grandparents to brand new parents so they get off on the right track. It's definitely, whether you have 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour for holidays. I mean, I've covered it all, and it's broken in to make it easy for parents. It's broken into time frames. When you just have time for gestures, what